I've been swapping out stale fuel for good stuff on classic cars for many years, but I've never stopped long enough to do an experiment just to see how impotent stale fuel is when you compare it to fresh-ish fuel. Now, when you think about this, it's got a flash point of about minus 43 degrees Celsius. And what that means is that's the lowest temperature where this liquid can make enough vapours that could ignite. So because we're at sort of room temperature-ish, or cold room temperature, maybe 15 degrees, there should be plenty of vapours coming off our gasoline. But I suspect that there's going to be many more vapours coming off this one, the fresh fuel, compared to the stale fuel. So I have a little experiment in mind. I'm just going to pop some glasses on. I also have a fire extinguisher just in case it all goes out of hand. And I'm doing this here so you don't have to do it at home. So please don't try this at home. I'm just going to pop in our stale fuel from the Land Rover. Just pop in some pretty fresh petrol. Now I'm going to remove these to somewhere safe. And then I've got my little lighters here. Make sure I've got a bit of fire. And the idea is I'm just going to slowly bring these towards the ramekins, and the idea is I think this is going to ignite before the stale fuel does, and probably it's going to burn a little brighter and probably for a little longer. So let's have a go. Aha, there we go, as suspected. So that's very interesting. So it still burns. So that's the thing with stale fuel, you might still get your vehicle to turn over eventually, but clearly with the good stuff, it's going to work much better. And what you can also see is because our stale fuel is also a little bit contaminated, it's leaving more of a sooty deposit around the ramekin compared to the cleaner fuel, which is obviously burning a bit better and making a little bit less smoke. Now, perhaps the worst thing about working on a classic car is the rust. The metal moth gets absolutely everywhere, and normally it's the thing that takes the most time to deal with. But because of that, unsurprisingly, there are all kinds of different solutions on the market and ways of actually trying to get rid of it, deal with it, treat it, make it somehow more stable. So the problem I've got with our Range Rover is that a brand new tank, it's one of the parts that is actually available still for this vehicle, is only £140. But there are a couple of treatments you can get where it actually can be very expensive indeed, maybe as much as £180 just to do something as big as that tank. So I've had a little trawl on the internet and bought a few products that came to light, including a couple of our wives' tales as well, just so we can actually do a proper, nearly scientific experiment. Now, when it comes to rust remedies, there are basically two camps. You have rust converters and rust removers. Now, the rust removers normally use some kind of acid to actually dissolve the rust and to get down to bare metal, whereas the rust converters use normally some kind of phosphoric compound to convert the iron oxide into iron phosphate. Now, because of that, effectively, the rust is magically removed, if you like, or converted, and then the resulting chemical is either like a skin on the outside of the metal, and that stops any further corrosion from getting in there. But of course, you've got to be quite careful that you've got every single edge, otherwise the rust could easily start forming again. So what I've got here, first of all, I've got a couple of proprietary products here that have their own secret ingredients. So then we have some household products. Now we've got some white vinegar. That's quite a classic for cleaning bits and pieces, particularly dissolving a bit of rust, but it might take a while. Then we have good old Coke. Now this has been used for cleaning for many, many years, but the reason it works is because it has citric acid in it, which puts it into the rust remover camp, but also it has phosphoric acid in it, which puts it into the converter camp. So it'll be really interesting to see what this actually does to a little bit of rust. And then finally, I have a selection of some rust converters. Now these may not be quite so useful on the inside of our tank because obviously normally they're just sort of painted on and left, but they might be brilliant for the outside of the tank. So again, I thought just for completeness, we try 3 of them to see what happens. Now, to give them the best chance of actually doing their thing, I'm going to leave these for about 48 hours or so the chemistry can really go for it. It's really helpful that it's a really hot day today. That's going to help kind of speed things up, but it's still going to take a while. Now, when it comes to the converters here, they normally actually do their magic in about 15 to 30 minutes. So I'm just going to paint on each of these other samples individually, and then while they're going off, I'll actually start working on trying to vacuum out all those bits and pieces from inside the tank. Now these little chaps have been stewing for about 24 hours now, but even after only half an hour there was a clear winner beginning to emerge, but I thought I'd let the others catch up. But actually, it's doing such a good job. Look at that, there's no rust there whatsoever at all. And a bottle of this stuff will be just enough to go the whole of the tank. I just put it in, slosh it around, keep turning it over every hour or so, and hopefully within a very short amount of time actually we should end up with a completely rust-free inside of our tank, which would be wonderful. Now it's interesting to see on the Coke actually, when you have a look at that, you can see the rust has actually turned black in sort of a number of places, almost all of it really, which is really interesting. So that phosphoric acid is really doing its thing. I mean, it's not doing a brilliant job, but it's actually pretty good. If you got stuck, perhaps this could get you out of a hole. Now, when it comes to the rust converters, I think they've all done a really good job of actually converting that rust, but I think just aesthetically, I quite like the one on the end here, so I think I'll go with that for the outside of our tank to make a nice tidy job of that. So I've gone out and bought some pump fresh fuel today, so we can actually see how much better this burns than the stale fuel. So same procedure as last time. I'm just going to pop a little bit of that in there, and you can see it is very, very, very clear. And this side, of course, not. I have a feeling that some of the contamination could have been diesel, could have been chip fat, could have been all kinds of things, but now this is going to work a treat. I've got my fire extinguisher again just in case, and as always, don't try this at home, because I'm doing it for you. Let's get our fire going. There we are. So same as last time, we'll just go in, keep it nice and even on both of them. I'm hoping the vapours will go bang, but not too bang. There we go. There you go, much brighter, a little bit quicker. Definitely worth using the good fresh stuff. So let's see if I can illustrate this on the bench here. And I've got a ball bearing here. I reckon that's probably about 10 milliamps. And I can use this angle to represent the force provided by the voltage. So obviously the higher this ramp is, the more force there is, the more voltage there is. And all that is going to be trying to put the electricity effectively through my protective barrier of my skin here. And of course I'm obviously going to need a heart. So I'll put this on my heart of glass, like so. There we go, and obviously I don't want to get the electricity anywhere near there. So I've lost my bearings. Oh, hang on, there we go. So, there we go. So, right now, at about 12 volts or so, theoretically, the current isn't actually going to get through the resistance or the barrier of my skin. At 24 volts, again, much the same sort of thing. So again, we're kind of perfectly safe. Now at 48 volts, that's the kind of voltage where some people might start to feel a little bit uncomfortable, but most people won't even notice it. And in fact, it's deemed safe, and it's the sort of thing that powers golf buggies, and so that's why they stick at that. But if you go to 60 volts, well then, that's when the current can actually flow into your body and can get to your heart. Now thankfully, at just 10 milliamps, that's not really going to do any real damage. You're going to feel a little bit uncomfortable, but basically you're going to be okay. Now obviously at 60 volts, if you are wearing gloves, I'll just pop that little barrier in there, then it's back to being a different matter. You're completely protected, so your skin doesn't even get a look in because the gloves get there first, which is why it's so important to wear the right spec glove for the job in hand and for the voltage that you're dealing with. Right, if we get rid of that, right, so now we know that at 60 volts, current can flow into your body, but at least at 10 milliamps, it's not really going to do you any harm. So if I get a bigger marble, for example, at 20 milliamps, then obviously it's still going to get through into your body, but at 20 milliamps, you're going to get painful shock, but you're not going to get any muscle spasms. Now at 20 to 75 milliamps, once that gets into your body, things start getting quite serious. You get a serious shock, you get a bit of a jolt, or even a lot of a jolt, but also you lose control of your muscles. And in fact, most seriously, that's when a victim would actually get clamped onto the wire or cable or source of the shock. And this is where DC starts to differ from AC. So with DC, the electricity is constant. It's like the flow of a river, so you just can't let go. Whereas with AC, it ebbs and flows like waves, and that means you actually get the opportunity to let go, or in fact, sometimes you'll even be thrown off it. Now that's why electrocution by DC electricity can be so much more serious. And when we start talking about even bigger currents, things get really grisly. So at 100 milliamps, your heart starts to fibrillate, which means the muscles are no longer kind of pumping all as one. They're all kind of all over the place, which means, of course, your blood stops going around your body. And at 200 milliamps, your entire chest kind of clamps right up, and basically everything stops working. But weirdly, at that kind of level, if you can be pulled off your electrocution source quickly enough, then you might actually be able to be revived. But of course, you left there too long, things start to get cooking, and it's very, very unpleasant indeed. Now, if you do find yourself in a situation where you need to rescue somebody from electrocution, you must not touch them unless you are suitably insulated. So get a long piece of wood, make sure you've got some rubber gloves perhaps, anything that means you're not actually in contact with the electricity source. Otherwise, the ambulance will be picking up 2 people rather than just the 1. So with the right amount of voltage, the current will be able to flow through your body and therefore do damage or even kill you. But interestingly, things like electric fences and tasers use an awful lot of voltage and a tiny amount of current. So maybe 50,000 volts to make sure the electricity does go through you, but a tiny, tiny amount of just a couple of milliamps. And that way, obviously it's going to be really uncomfortable. You are going to fall to your knees in submission, but obviously it won't do any lasting damage. So that's the problem when it comes to EVs. Electric vehicles want as much power as possible from the battery pack they've got on board. So in our case, we're using 360 volts, and also in our case, I'm going to be using some fusing at 300 amps. And 300 amps is actually 300,000 milliamps. So clearly it has a lot of potential to do a lot of bodily damage. And that amount of current looks about like this. So, here we go, see what happens. And that's definitely going to be shattering for your heart. As it's been a whole year since we started this foolishness, we should celebrate.
Happy birthday, Workshop Diaries.
Fantastic. The question is, can we actually light a candle with a laser? Yeah, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Can you make popcorn with a laser? Thank you, sir. I've got a bit of an idea. Basically, at the moment, it seems we've got the corns blowing all over the place. I think if we add a little bit of water, maybe it'll hold them in place, but also maybe the steam that's made will actually help kind of get that heat into the little kernels. So here we go. Thank you, sir. Well, it's definitely popping. Well, I would say that is a successful pop-tastic yes. You can make popcorn with a laser. Yeah, even tastes like popcorn. Fantastic. Easy. Yeah. So perhaps an obvious question, can you cook steak and chips with a laser? Alright, well now we've got steak, probably time for chips. There you go, Paul. The chips are done. I made it. You get to eat it.
That'd do for starters.
Can you cook an egg and toast with a laser? Well, it would seem that either the bread is completely impervious to laser and then suddenly it starts to get completely incinerated. So, on average, I would say it's a nice piece of toast. Excellent. There you go, Paulie.
Thank you very much.
Oh, try not to break the yolk. That's what I have.
Oh, lovely. Thank
Look
you.
at that. Hang on. A few bits missing there, sir. There you go, Paul. Laser egg and toast for breakfast.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Can you make s'mores with a laser? Yes, sir, you definitely can make the s'more with a laser. I eat mine with a laser. How do you eat yours?
Thanks for stopping by the workshop. If you enjoyed the video, even just a little bit, then click like. If you hated it, well then click like 3 times. Also remember to leave your thoughts and your questions in the comments. And obviously we'd love to see you again soon, so please remember to click subscribe if you haven't already, and click the bell for notifications of when the next video is published, or when I have some intriguing news.